$153,000. That's actually, when you use fund balance, you're actually drawing on essentially a savings account. So it's really not new money coming into the city. You're drawing on existing fund balance. So if you look at that positive number in the lower right-hand corner of 1.7, and then actually subtract the use of fund balance, the drawing on your savings account of 2.1, it approximately equals about a negative $400,000. Now I realize that isn't necessarily tied directly back to the drop in your unassigned fund balance of $750,000, but I'm hoping that that at least gets it a little bit closer. The other variances deal with timing issues, predominantly carryovers from one fiscal year to the next, and that's all explained in the footnotes. I could go into it further if you like, but really the other part of the difference there really represents timing issues. So there is a wealth of information in your footnotes, both on your long-term debt, your cash disclosures, your liabilities for what is known as OPEB, or the other post-employment benefit. There's a lot of information in there. I certainly could answer any questions that you may have on those. We do have a couple of recommendations for you in our management letter, starting on page 3, and then they will go on to page 4. Our first one is to continue to improve your internal controls over departmental receipts. As part of our engagement, we went to several departments within the city and looked at the individual policies and procedures for collecting, holding, remitting, cash collections from the various departments. And there's a couple of bullet items here on page 3 that we think you can strengthen your internal control procedures by implementing policies and procedures that would require the departments to reconcile their records with the general ledger, increase the timeliness for stamping checks for deposit only, could help any diversion that could take place there. And departments should also be provided with a receipt from collections when those are remitted here at City Hall. And over on page 4, we continue to recommend a more formal risk assessment process. I would suggest that when an auditor uses the term formal, you could probably replace that with the word written. And risk assessment is really something that a lot of companies are doing, and it's coming into the governmental world, where you actually assess where things could go wrong in your financial statements, and where they could go wrong either by error or by irregularity. It may be with receipts. It could possibly be with, how often do you assess the risks that you may have related parties or any conflicts of interest and things like that that could potentially lead to problem areas. We do it as part of our audit or all of our audits. It's just trying to engage management and elected officials in the risk assessment process. So that's a very, very quick walkthrough of our audit, a couple of the key high points in your financial statements, and a couple of recommendations that we have. With that, we'll try to answer any questions that the committee may have.
Thank you. Very good presentation. Questions, committee?
Yeah, Vinny, you're talking about use of fund balance, and then it coming out showing at the end we're about 400,000. But if we have a major flood catastrophe, and then we had the airport, we took that money out of fund balance this year, and for example, FEMA's going to give us 75%, and then we're going to put that back into fund balance next year, and so it really distorts it, because we have to pay up front to be able to get the money, but in some cases, we're not going to get the money in the same year.
I very much agree that there is a little bit of a distortion there. That may be, however, that's how generally accepted accounting principles require you to show it. And that's why I think the MD&A can really be an asset, not necessarily not a financial statement asset, but a method, perhaps that's the better word, to communicate that while that third number up from the bottom has brackets around it, maybe things weren't all negative. Certainly floods happen. You have to do what you have to do.
More committee questions?
Question on page 33. At the middle of the page, you talk about excess expenditures over appropriations.
Mm-hmm.
$563,000.
Yeah.
What do we have there in terms of how that came together? Is that another one of the accrual methods of, in other words, if somebody read that, they'd say, well, we overspent by $563,000, but I don't
In
believe
in that particular line item of your budget, but as tying that back to page 20, which is your comparative schedule of the budget, as a total, a bottom line total budget, you actually underspent it by 2.4, but that was just one functional category within your budget that was overspent, but all of the others were underspent by significantly more.
So as a recommendation, it might be that we have to budget more for the next fiscal year?
I would recommend that you always look at your next fiscal year's budget, it shouldn't only be based on the prior year budget. It should be based on a combination of factors. One might be the prior year budget, but what you anticipate your actual will be at year's end. Too often, we see either communities or school districts only look at one fiscal year's budget and compare it to the prior year budget as opposed to the prior year actual. It really needs to be a blended methodology.
You have another?
Well, I have plenty, but
Yes.
So, being both on the school board, and